Let's bring in constitutional law expert Bruce DelValle now, who joins us also live from Washington. Bruce, thank you very much for your time, first of all, Bruce. Now, lawmakers have voted against a measure that would have limited Donald Trump's ability to order more military action in Iran. I think it's fair to say little surprise there. At 21 GMT, so not far off now, the House of Representatives is to vote on its own version of the War Powers Resolution. Let's talk about the legal authority that Donald Trump has or does not, as the case may be, to launch strikes against Iran without approval from Congress.
Rhiannon, that's a great question, and that's the essential question. In fact, that may arguably be the constitutional question, not only of our time, but of all time. The Constitution is built upon the balancing of powers, the sharing of powers between the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive. And it comes to a focal point in the War Powers Act. The Constitution is very clear that only Congress can declare war. However, the president is the commander in chief. So there's a tension there. So what's happened, how this works is the president often goes forward, conducts military operations, and war is never declared. In fact, the last time war was declared was World War II. There have been over 100 presidential uses of military action without any congressional declaration in our history. So it is a great tension. Does President Trump have the authority to do what he did? Yes, he does. Is it what the congressional framers intended? I'm not sure. Although George Washington used military force almost immediately against the Native Americans and Thomas Jefferson on the Barbary Coast. So it is a microcosmic view of how our Constitution works, the tension, the balancing of powers.
And do you think, Bruce, that lawmakers voting against the War Powers Resolution, will this give Trump the license now to go even further? Are we likely to see boots on the ground in the foreseeable future next?
Well, Rhiannon, the War Powers Resolution exists, or the act exists. It gives the president 60 days before Congress has to say yay or nay, and an additional 30 days. So it's a 90 days window to conduct these sort of operations. The action in the Senate and the action today, which I don't believe will pass, it may be a little tight, surprisingly tight in the House, would be to say, you can't do this, bring our boys home, or stop. And I don't see that as being a viable way to go forward, given the fact that, at least from the U.S. perspective, Iran has been a global antagonist and supporter of terror and has basically been a pariah state and an enemy of America since 1979, since its inception. So would President Trump go forward in the face of congressional rebuke? I don't think so, but I don't think it's ever going to come to that. The way the War Powers Act works is the president files documents saying, okay, I'm using military force. My 90-day clock starts now. No president has ever filed those documents. And it's extraordinary to see the Democrats just clutching at their pearls and beating their breasts. And they said nothing when Barack Obama did the same thing. Perhaps even worse. What Obama did in Libya and Syria, I would suggest, is probably not nearly as provoked as Iran was. Iran was provoking the world, especially the United States. They were building up their ballistic missile capability so they would become invincible and they could develop a nuclear weapon. And I think that would be catastrophic for the planet.
If the conflict escalates even further, Bruce, what constitutional checks do exist to balance presidential power in wartime?
Well, as I said, the 90-day window, but the clock has to start. Congress can always just say no more funding. They can refuse to authorize funding. In the absence of congressional authorization, there's no more money. In the absence of money, one cannot conduct war. That's just been the way it's been since the Roman days. So that is the ultimate power that Congress has. But there's once again a tension between what the public wants, what the public perceives, and what Congress wants to do. So it's one thing to get up there and say we can't have war or we need war. It's another thing when the American public speaks and demands what needs to happen. Right now, I believe President Trump has the backing of the American people. Right now, I believe President Trump has the backing of most of the world. I don't think anyone in the world, I think it'd be hard to find anyone in the world that feels safer.
You think the American people are for this war?
I don't think it's a war yet. I think they're for what is happening. I think what is happening is something that I think the American people, if they're not in favor of, they certainly understand resignedly and sadly after Afghanistan, after Vietnam. We don't want to get into that again. I think the American people support limiting Iran's ability to have ICBM and intercontinental ballistic power that threatens the whole world. And I think that's there. I may be wrong. As far as boots on the ground, I think we're seeing a sea change here, Rhiannon. I don't think boots on the ground is what the future of military operations looks like. I think it's politically horrifying to send in boots on the ground because the casualties are actual and they're real. Right now, we're seeing a technological war, a quick strike war. We're seeing the future of warfare. And I hope that war will never happen. But if war has to happen, I think mass casualties are the least of which you want to see. So I don't think we're going to see boots on the ground. I don't know that it achieves a unitary purpose. Perhaps once the war comes to whatever, or action comes to whatever conclusion it's going to come to, there may be occupation, but I think it's going to be an occupation of numerous countries. I do not expect to see the 10th Mountain, the 101st, the 82nd, any of the great U.S. Army and Marine divisions invading Iran. I just don't see that happening. I don't think it makes any sense tactically.
Bruce, really appreciate your analysis this evening. Thank you very much, Bruce DelValle,
Thank you.
for speaking to us live.
It's great to see you again.